last night. I was.
It was just, okay. Well, okay, we're live. We're live.
Alrighty. So, all set, Madam Administrator?
All set, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. And we're going to have our deficiency hearing right now. Representative Walker, do you have any words of encouragement for us?
No, let's all be brief.
Senator Minor.
Good afternoon to both chairs. I just want to say I'm having a little bit of difficulty reconciling today's list with the OPM letter that came out on March 18th.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that we'll be able to, I hope someone will be able to enlighten me without me having to ask a half a bajillion questions.
We're okay with you asking half a bajillion questions, but we're also hoping the same thing.
Yeah.
Representative France, are you on? I don't see him today.
No, I don't see him.
But just for the listening public, there are several other meetings going on at the same time. So be aware of the fact that many people are not here, but they're on other legislative business at either at home or in the building. Many of us are in the building and on a couple of different meetings. So we're going to go right into it, and we're going to recognize the new Secretary of the Office of Policy and Management, Acting Secretary, Mr. Beckham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am Jeffrey Beckham, Acting Secretary, Office of Policy and Management. We have submitted about 4 pages of testimony to you. I won't read that to you in the spirit of brevity, as you alluded to earlier. We'll get right to it. Most of your members know that this is our Deficiency Bill, which is one of the components of our midterm adjustments that we make for the short year. We are adjusting shortfalls in this current fiscal year, and we pay for that, as you can see in the bill, by deappropriating an equivalent sum so that we maintain balance in the current fiscal year. We have the latest estimates. We have on page 2, you'll see the current estimates. Some of the items have dropped off, some of the others have changed. So we will need an adjustment to the bill that reflects those latest estimates before you JF it or before we vote on it later next month. I will just draw your attention. I don't think I have to, but the single largest item, 2/3 of the adjustment being made in terms of deficiency appropriation, is the what we think we're going to need in terms of funding to deal with the tentative labor agreements, which are being ratified by the unions this week and into next, I guess. And we will be coming to your committee in the coming weeks with those agreements. And so we will not be speaking about those details today. We are awaiting, being respectful of that ratification process. But when that's done, we will have quite a lot of documentation and a lot of information for you on that at a subsequent hearing, presumably next month. With that, I'll let you get right to questions. I have staff here. I have members of our staff here. Our deputy, Paul Potamianos. I don't know if everyone knows that. He's the deputy now at OPM. And along with Greg Messner, he leads our budget division. And we have several of our section directors with us as well, who can go into more detail. And you have, as you mentioned earlier, agency representatives as well testifying today on their specific agency needs in the deficiency section, so they can give you yet more detail. With that, I'll let you get to your questions.
Thank you. And so is there another sheet, Mr. Secretary, that came out, I pulled off the governor's bill. Is that in your testimony? Is that where we would find that other sheet to Senator Minor's concerns and both Representative Walker and myself? I'm sure Representative France, if he was able to be here, but when I pulled off the request of the governor that talked about this, and then the letter that came out on March 22nd, I just don't see the numbers. So is there another sheet that came out that, I know you said we have to change some things. Is that something that we can get?
That is page 2 of our testimony. general fund deficiencies and
Um,
special transportation fund deficiencies.
So, just for clarity, Madam Administrator,
Yes, Madam Chair.
I'm wondering if you could share page 2 of the testimony so that we could all see that. Is
Sure.
that a possibility, please?
Give me a moment. It's gonna take me
Yep.
a little bit. You might want to continue to talk to the acting secretary and give me about a minute.
And relative to the labor agreements, because there is money in many pieces of the governor's budget. There is also our RSA that we have not spent over the number of years since we've had a labor agreement. And we also have, it doesn't look to me like we have spent any of that money to pay out claims relative to accrued vacation. And then it seems to me like in almost every form, whether it was in the carry forwards or in ARPA, it seemed to be dollars relative to the payout of the labor agreement. Is there a way that all of that can be combined?
We could
Okay.
likely produce an exhibit for you that will detail that, and we'll probably have to do that for you when we get to those details when the agreements come forward. In this, the fiscal year 22 component of that, as you know, it's a multi-year agreement, but the fiscal 22 year component of that is in the bill as drafted. It is the $224 million item at line T44 of the bill, and it is about 2/3 of the deficiency appropriation in the bill. But you're quite right. There are adjustments in 23 that will be made for this as well. I don't know if Greg, if you have can you summarize roughly? We'll have to give you a comprehensive exhibit for that when we get to the labor union agreements.
So let's just go to the general fund deficiencies on this, which is page 2
Okay.
of it. And so you had just so for clarity's sake, you had 49,855,000 in the Department of Administrative Services, and it's now down to 24,450,000. Is that what we would be looking at?
Yes, we believe we still need that amount for principally around things like the testing kits and the other PPE as a contingency for items that we may still need in this fiscal year through DAS.
Okay. And so I'm going to go to questions. Representative Walker?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, Acting Secretary, and your staff. So I guess I'm just going to continue on with what Senator Austin was talking about. The March letter that came out after the deficiency bill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's part of the reason why there's such a change in what we've got in front of us.
That's right. The deficiency bill was drafted in January, and we've had some experience over the last 2 months. And as we go along, we have to make adjustments. We may make yet more adjustments as we move through April.
Okay. And I guess the question specific for the agencies, I will hold for the agencies because they probably be more equipped to answer those. But in looking at it, the RSA, that is an estimation of what you think is necessary, and you are taking it out of RSA and putting it into the general fund. Is that what you're doing?
I'm going to let Greg answer that, but I think the RSA is in the general fund.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. It is. Okay. That's why I don't understand why it wasn't in the March letter. So I guess that's what my confusion is. You know what? I'm going to hold my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Sue, could you just scroll down on this sheet for a minute, please? Okay, stop. There you go. I just wanted to see. Okay. Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to go back, I guess, to my initial comment,
Mhm.
the initial letter that came out pegged the deficiencies, I think it's somewhere around 56 million,
52.
52 million. And then sometime between then and now, is that completely the recognition of estimates of the agreement as it pertains to reserve for salary? Or are there some other things that you didn't know on the 22nd, but you now know?
I'm going to call on Paul Potamianos to talk about the deficiency letter, which is a slightly different animal than the deficiency bill.
Sure. So the answer to your question is that our estimates that were released on March 18th did not include the components that would be relative to the tentative labor agreements. And those are the items that are on the screen right now that have asterisks next to them. So the biggest piece of that would be a need within the reserve for salary adjustment account to help support the FY22 costs of the pending agreement. Could we have included a sum in our estimates on the 18th of March? We probably could have, but again, it's dependent, as the secretary said, we're trying to be respectful of the process that the unions are going through right now in bringing the matter to their members for consideration and a vote. And so we did not, in our estimate on the 18th, recognize any sum that would be needed this year relative to those agreements. So the 52 million that you referenced are the other shortfalls within agencies, funding needs that would be required to be addressed through a deficiency appropriation.
Thank you. And back to what I think I heard the commissioner say, just relative to DAS, the forecasted deficiency of 49 million has been down estimated to 24.4. As I understand it, the COVID test kits being part of that explanation of need. What portion of those, if any, is federal grant eligible as opposed to general fund eligible?
So,
or are they not mutually exclusive?
So Secretary, I'll jump in on this one. At the point in time where we drafted the deficiency bill in January, the Department of Administrative Services was authorized to go ahead and make purchases of PPE and testing equipment. And we gave them the ability to, at the time, they thought they needed $50 million worth of test kits and such. A portion of that purchase, as time has elapsed, they decided they did not need that amount of purchasing capacity. And what they did purchase, a chunk of it was is expected to be reimbursed by FEMA. And so that's why we have a revision now. We're anticipating that about half of what we had given them as authority to go out and purchase in order to meet the needs of the pandemic would, sorry, we have a fire truck going by the building here. I'll wait till it passes. About half of that $50 million need at this point, we're estimating would be a potential cost of the general fund, something that would not be reimbursed by FEMA. And it's possible we'll have even more of that purchase picked up through FEMA as the reimbursement process unfolds. But at this point in time, our estimate is about 25 million would be required to be supported by the general fund.
And I understand, are we still playing by the 2-question rule, Madam Chairman?
No, I think that we'll go up to 4 because I don't think there's going to be a lot of questions. And I think that might capture each person's question as we move through.
Well, I want to be fair to the other members too. If they want to ask, I'm happy to come back.
Yeah, there's two other people up right now, but one is for a second time. So if you want to continue, sir, please do so.
All right. So understanding that the 24.4 may be further adjusted, am I correct that there are both spending cap and budget considerations when decisions are made to have expenses paid for through federal COVID money, FEMA money versus general fund?
Federal expenditures, expenditure of federal funds are exempt from the spending cap. So we don't have spending cap concerns if we're spending federal funds.
Right, but if the expenditure in its iteration of 5036 was a general fund expenditure, certainly it was carried that way on this form.
Right.
Moving it to a FEMA funded expenditure does have implications for the spending cap, correct?
Paul, go ahead.
It does not, because, well, let me go back to the 5036 as presented to you. We have proposed new appropriations or deficiency appropriations and offsetting de-appropriations to ensure that we remain cap compliant. And so the ultimate deficiency bill would take a similar approach, in that any of these appropriations that we make to cover these needs would be matched with de-appropriations of lapsing funds elsewhere to ensure that we remain compliant with the spending cap for fiscal year 22. To the extent, to your question about,
I understand. I got that part. I'll let that go. I think I've got a handle on what the implications are. All right. And with respect to UConn, my last question, am I correct that UConn received direct federal aid around FEMA, I mean, maybe through FEMA, around COVID expenses? And are these related to COVID expenses, or are they payroll projections? What do these amounts represent?
I believe the amounts listed there with the asterisks are all related to the collective bargaining agreements.
that's correct.
And so this new list then does make a representation of current year expenses relative to that collective bargaining agreement that has not yet been ratified.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Meyer. Representative Dathan.
Apologies. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just trying to get a handle on this. If you scroll down and look at the OPM, reserve for salary adjustments, you know, the 224 million, we heard from so many agencies that they had funded positions, but yet weren't able to fill them. And so we would be a little bit under. And then we had other agencies where we made cuts, like in the ECD, to the personal services line in other areas. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, why we have such a large reserve for salary adjustments when we have unfilled and funded positions.
Well, that number represents the net amount that we believe we will need to add to that line item to take care of the wage agreements that are being ratified now.
So which and all of those wage agreements are sitting within OPM, or are they in other?
They're all of those marked with an asterisk on that page. The ones in OPM are the executive branch agencies that report to the governor, and the others are the higher education units.
And Representative, to the extent that agencies need funds from RSA to cover the costs of, let's say there's a salary increase in 22, OPM allots funds out of the RSA account to that agency to cover those costs. So it's centrally budgeted in RSA. We distribute the funds to the impacted agencies based on the cost impact to each of those agencies.
Okay, so do you have an analysis, agency by agency, the support for this 224 million?
As the secretary mentioned, when we come before you, if the unions are currently considering the tentative agreements, to the extent that these agreements are ratified by the unions, we will be bringing to the General Assembly a package for consideration, and we would have detailed cost sheets to present to you at that time.
It's just, it's not a terribly round number. That's why I was thinking there was some methodology in coming up with that estimate. But if you're not able to share it at this time, that's fine. Can I ask a second question, Madam Chair? Or was
It's
that
a third or fourth, but go
okay?
ahead.
I'll come back. I'll come
No,
back.
go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm going. It's hard because I have the same sheet up on mine. Within certain areas. So, like my second question was in terms of like DECD, for example, we're saying that we have a $300,000 shortfall. I know that's not super material. I know my dog's very upset about this. But like if you look at the governor's budget for 23, he's taken we've taken a revised estimate.
Lucy,
and lowered
I
it.
can't hear you, I'm sorry, we can't
I'm
hear.
sorry. He's in the budget for DECD, for example, we've lowered the original appropriation from 7.9 down to 7.5. And we have an over, we're expecting a deficiency there. And I'm just trying to understand, are we being realistic in our budgeting for 23 if we're saying we're going to be less next year, but in fact, we actually have a deficiency this year? Does that question make sense, Madam Chair?
Well, if you're asking me the question, then
No, but does the question?
the question makes sense. The question does make sense, except for if you're talking about DECD, they also talked about some other things in the DECD line item that was related to staffing of the Social Equity Council, which and expenses for a third party to conduct a study. Now, the study's not gonna, we're not gonna need to support that, and we can ask those questions of DECD when they come up.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to understand why on one hand, we're saying we need more money for 22, but yet we're saying in 23, it's gonna be less. And that's kind of, just flipped around a couple agencies and saw this in the book. So if you can explain that, that would be great.
Yeah, and just so you know, we'll get my understanding is the contracts will be in the General Assembly somewhere around the end of the month or the first day or so of April. So we'll get them then. Are you all set, Representative?
Sure, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Representative Walker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we opened up the conversation with the March letter, I just have one quick question to ask. I'm not sure who. How much in total vacancies are we talking about in the lapses that we have in the March letter?
I don't think I've done the math to total up the amount of the lapses that are related to personal services, but
Yes.
we have on pages of our March 18th letter, on pages 4 and 5 of that letter, we do detail for each of the agencies where we're projecting unspent funds. We do note whether those unspent funds are in personal services.
So how much would that be? Do you have any idea?
I haven't, I'd have to add that up for you to get that back to you.
I came up with about 98,980,000 just in that. And then in special transportation, I did a quick math and I think that one, I lost my, because I was adding it up. So I'm assuming that we're going to have a longer, special transportation was 22 million. So that's over 100 million that we've got in vacancies in our agencies, which terrifies me. And I just want to say that that we in Connecticut need to look at that, and we all need to do it together, because having that many vacancies, I mean, $70 million in DOC and vacancies in personnel, that's a lot. So as we go forward in this, are we going to start talking about these as deficiencies later on? Or are we going to flip the switch? But I think we need to really be honest and talk about how badly shaped our state is with the amount of vacancies that we have. So thank you, madam.
Are there any other questions for the secretary? Mr. Secretary, if you wouldn't mind hanging around, Senator Minor.
All right, Madam Chairman. So again, I understand the interest on the part of the administration in trying to let the process play itself out. But if there were estimates in print of what the costs associated with this agreement might be to one entity or the other, let me just pick out maybe the CCSU system. Should that printed estimate match the deficiency number if we're trying to keep them whole, or is it too early for that?
It should match the number that we need to keep them whole. We will have to pass a deficiency bill. You will have to pass a deficiency bill to stay in balance for fiscal 22. And so whatever they need to make those wage agreements work, and there will be FY22 costs associated with those agreements. And so that's what we are suggesting to you today. The bill should include, before you pass it, these numbers to keep us in balance for 22 and account for those wage agreements.
And with regard to whether these numbers are shy of estimates that might already be floating around, that's not a surprise, and it'll just require us to make those adjustments when the time comes. Question?
If we have better numbers before you enact it, we will absolutely get them to you. If we have more accurate numbers, we will work with you right up until the last day of the session if need be.
Thank you.
So I'm actually hoping we're not doing the deficiency bill on the last day of the session.
Me neither, Madam Chairman.
So I was going to ask you, Mr. Secretary, if you could hang around, because I do believe that there may be other questions that will be more your bailiwick than the agencies. So if you guys could just hang in there, please. Up next, we have Commissioner Lehman. Commissioner. Madam Administrator, is Commissioner Lehman available?
We're trying to promote him, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Commissioner Lehman, I see you, Kyle. Oh,
Hi, good afternoon.
good afternoon, Commissioner. So you want to just give us what your deficiencies are and how they relate to where we are,
I'm not sure if you have time for all of my deficiencies, Senator Austin, but I'm going to focus on the bill here at this point. So importantly with me is Ginny Ray Clay, who is the Executive Director of the Social Equity Council. So the DECD focus on the deficiency bill is solely a function of the Social Equity Council. So the adult use cannabis law that was passed last year has DECD administering the SEC. We hired Ginny Ray Clay, the interim executive director, last August. Ginny Ray has been building out her team. So there's really two main parts of the DECD deficiency bill here, or the DECD portion of it. Roughly 300,000 is for expenses around the work that the SEC is doing, principally accounting work on certifying social equity applicants as we get the adult use market underway, and then also funds for a study that was required to be done by the statute that was passed that's going to UConn. The balance of the funding, approximately 200,000, is PS, is personal services. So Ginny Ray is here. She has a team of roughly 4 or 5 people that's working with her, and she has open searches for at least another 2 going on right now. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any questions, and Ginny can go into detail on the expenditures or the hiring that she's doing.
So your deficiencies relative to the budget of DECD, just qualify that in case anybody was wondering what deficiencies we were talking about.
Correct. Yes, I'm just limited into that for now.
Okay, because otherwise we'd have to talk to your wife. But is about $500,000 in total.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions for the commissioner? Representative Walker?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, sir, for your testimony. So we didn't give you any money to set up the equity fund last year?
It's been done. No, is my understanding, Rep. Walker. It's done. And the issue here, this is a stopgap because we believe whether it's an FY23, which is our current belief and beyond, there will be revenues coming in from the adult use cannabis market to support the SEC. So this really is an interim period where through the DECD budget is how it's been funded right now. And that's what's creating the deficiency. But this should be a very short-term phenomenon in advance of revenue coming in to support the work that Ginny's doing.
So when will we start getting revenues from the cannabis bill?
Ginny, do you want to take that? And then Secretary Beckham also looked like he was raising his hand to make a point.
Okay.
I don't know, Jeff, do you want to go first and then Ginny can jump in if you were going to touch on the question Rep. Walker asked me?
I do.
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
Yes, you did give $5 million in carry forward for the purposes of the SEC as a kind of a stopgap. You may recall that last session, the adult use cannabis bill was being drafted by stakeholders kind of off to the side while you all were doing the budget. And there was a very late reconciliation of, well, we're going to need some money. Let's just use 5 million to carry forward, kind of a placeholder. What we've done this year is we have a bill that amends last year's adult use cannabis legislation to make those funds available in this fiscal year going forward so that we can, as soon as those revenues start to come in, use them for the agencies. So some of the agencies on that page 2 where we had new numbers, those are cannabis related expenses that we are assigning to line items in those agencies, and we're going to use the cannabis funds coming in. So we won't need the 5 million in carry forward if we can cover it all through the cannabis revenue. And that 5 million can just go can lapse and go to balance.
Okay, so then I guess, Jenny Ray, can you tell me what are your expected expenses that are directly related to the Social Equity Council as you see it going forward?
Sure. As we see going forward, it's onboarding staff and then funding programs that will educate and stand up cannabis businesses. So educate social equity applicants and stand up cannabis businesses.
Okay, so do you have a dollar amount fixed to that yet?
Well, we are working very closely with OPM as we are onboarding our staff. I have 3 folks already on board, and I'm expecting 2 more over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then we have 2 other positions that we have posted for, and we're expecting those folks to come on. Our programs, we're looking at doing technical assistance with a third party. And we're also looking to do verification of the social equity applications that will allow folks to receive provisional licenses and then ultimately receive full license.
And the positions that you're hiring and the community outreach or whatever you want to call it, the education or whatever, all of that is in 22, correct?
It's going to start in 22. Yes.
It's in 22. So the 5 million that we have, we may not need because we're going to address. I think the clean way is to do the 5 million, but I'll leave that alone. And so just my last follow up on that is your outreach going to be teaching people about how to obtain or create businesses for cannabis, or is it just going to be a health driven campaign?
No, it is actually going to be helping because cannabis is new to Connecticut. So it is going to be providing subject matter expert training for our social equity applicants to teach them what they don't know, what they may be deficient in as far as the cannabis industry, and also helping them to start their business, to actually open businesses.
Okay, all right, well, don't forget New Haven. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Up next is Representative Dathan.
And the dogs have calmed down. Nice to see you, Commissioner, and thank you for coming in before the committee. So just to kind of get an understanding, you said that the SEC positions are sort of short-term in nature, or the funding requirement is short-term in nature?
No, the positions are not short-term. The vision is there is an SEC that's fully staffed and that there is sufficient revenues to come back to the state that can be reinvested in the communities that were impacted by the war on drugs. So what I was referencing before is the short-term period where the SEC is being set up, where you don't have revenues coming in from the cannabis licensing process and the taxation.
So are we going to create either a separate agency called SEC to manage the positions, and then we can be able to better track the amount of spending that goes along with that? Is that my understanding?
Well, so DECD, as mentioned at the outset, for administrative purposes, the SEC, which is a 15-member board, was established by the legislation that was passed last year. And then you have Ginny Ray, who is the executive director, who's building out her team. So I don't believe any more needs to be done on that front. You have an entity and a governance structure that I believe works.
Okay. So my second question is regarding the 23 budget. If we are projecting that we are going to be needing additional 300,000 this year for 22, why are we assuming that we're going to actually need less in 23?
I believe in Secretary Beckham can jump in, but it's a function of those revenues coming in. So I think it's a question of there being funding to come in. I think the expenses, certainly on the personnel side, as we continue to ramp up, we're going to see greater FTE costs, but we should see revenues in FY23.
So you're netting revenue against personnel expenses? I thought revenues were in a separate line item and personnel expenses were a separate line item.
Again, Jeff can jump in here, but
Sure.
Go ahead, Jeff.
What you're seeing in the deficiency today for DECD is our assigning to them for the first time this social equity cost, right? So it's a brand new council created last year. The staff's just coming on board this year. We're assigning those costs to the agency, showing it as a deficiency that we will take care of in this bill. We will appropriate general fund revenue to cover it this year. You're quite right. We in FY23, we have to guess correctly, as will the committee when it does its budget, that there will be enough in DECD to cover this as well. And if we think we need to adjust that line, that is something we'll need to do for the FY23 portion of our budget adjustment this year. We put our best guess on the table in February. You're going to put your best guess on the table next month, and we'll see if we get the right number.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to get my head around, because we have in fiscal year 22, we have 7.9 in our budget. We've just added, we're just saying that we need to spend an additional 300,000. So that gets us up to about 8.2.
Yes, ma'am.
But the fiscal 23 budget, we saying we're not going to need the 8.2 anymore. We're actually going to need 7.6. So we're going to have another deficiency next year. Is that what I'm understanding?
Nope. That represents our best guess of what the agency will need next year based on all the changes that would have been made or that are expected to be made in the course of this next year.
Okay.
Paul may have a different angle.
I was just going
to.
I'm sorry. I turned my camera off since you had quite the panel before you. I think part of what you're referencing, Representative Dathan, is a transfer out of DECD of IT-related staff, as those under the governor's proposal to centralize funding for that staffing under the Department of Administrative Services, but it doesn't represent an actual reduction to personal services funding for the agency.
So you're saying in 22, because I was under the impression some of these IT centralizations actually happened in 22. So you're saying in the 22 amounts that we have here in our budget sheets?
No, I'm sorry. I'm referencing the 23. You had mentioned that it looked like there was a cut to the agency's budget in 23 in terms of the funding available to support staffing. And it's really just a transfer of resources between two agencies to recognize the IT consolidation.
Okay. Still trying to get my hands around,
Yeah.
but I appreciate.
And the SEC process sort of moves, I'll call it off budget in FY23. So what we're trying to do in the deficiency bill is recognize the cost of the agencies that aren't supported by the enacted budget for fiscal year 22, which is what the commissioner has mentioned and Ginny Ray have mentioned, these costs to support staffing for the SEC and some of the other costs that we would have anticipated this year.
Okay. Thank you so much for your explanation. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll continue to listen.
Thank you. And I do believe that we should see revenue coming in next year relative to the cannabis world. So that will cover some of what would happen here. Representative Dillon, followed by Senator Hartley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. I wonder if we could follow up, perhaps offline on about $4 million that was in your department for the repair and remediation of some homes in New Haven. I wouldn't say it falls into social equity, although it could if you really stretch it, given where some homes were repaired. The department and OPM had not wanted to release the dollars for many years. There was a meeting on December 10th, 2019, at which Mr. Beckham was present, requesting that the department move on that. I understand there was a tremendous problem during the shutdown with getting things done, but and I understand that OPM may disagree with some of this, although it is mystifying to me why it should. I wonder if you could provide subsequent to the meeting.
So Representative Dillon.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Dillon, just relative to this budget timeframe, I appreciate the comments. I really do. But I want to make sure that we're doing the deficiency component. So if you are requesting a meeting with the Office of Policy and Management relative to a part of the budget that's not on this today, I think you've been heard, and I expect that you'll get a phone call.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate that courtesy.
Thank you.
We'll follow up on the subsidence. Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Commissioner. Senator Hartley.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner, good afternoon. And to Ginny, I want to say welcome to the Appropriations Committee, Madam. You'll find, I think the Commissioner will tell you we're a very affable group. But I'm guessing this is your first time before us, so I want to say welcome and thank you for taking on this task. So if I hear, yes, if I hear you, you're about more than halfway through with your hires on the Equity Council, Ginny?
We're just about halfway through. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know how that hiring process is going because, it has been a very difficult employer market. But you also talked about the fact that you are going to use a vendor. Is that what I heard for technical assistance and training applicants?
Yes.
Is there an RFP that is in process or on the streets on this?
I just took a break from drafting the RFP to attend this hearing. So yes, we are working on an RFP for an accelerator, cannabis program accelerator.
Okay, and so that vendor you expect to be in place, I'm just wondering what your timeframes are.
We're hoping to have the vendor in place in sometime mid-May.
Okay, this is, I know, very accelerated and it's, a lot going on here. And then my last question is, so we're talking about revenue that we're going to see into the budget here in 23. And I don't know, David, if this is for you or Ginny, but can you tell us, like, is that third quarter? Is that 4Q? What are you thinking?
I don't have an update right now, Senator Hartley. Ginny, I don't know if you do. If not, we can get back to you with that.
Yeah, I
Yep.
don't, I don't quite have, we'll have a better idea once we begin to review the applications and know when we will be able to verify folks for provisional licenses, and then they will have a period of time to open their businesses, about 14 months to open their businesses.
Yeah, I hear you, because there's a lot that has to happen here. And so that's why I'm wondering, are we going to really be pushing up against year end, or, fiscal year end or whatever? But thank you, Ginny, for your answers, and to you, Mr. Commissioner, as well. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add, Senator Hartley, you asked about the job pool. We posted
Yeah.
a position and we received 475 responses. So folks are very, very much interested in social equity work that we're doing.
That's great. And of those applicants, I'm sure you're getting a representative mix, to actually assume those positions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for all your work.
Thank
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is, I believe it's the commissioner, maybe Jeannie can answer the question. When you're requesting $5 million for training, when they're supposed to start giving away the license, and when are you planning to start with the training?
So the training is actually the workforce development training. The Social Equity Council will be working with the Office of Workforce Competitiveness to provide that training. So I don't have an exact date of when that is going to start, but it will begin probably midsummer.
Midsummer. And the license, I know that you have some applicants, they already applied for the license. When are you planning to start giving away those licenses?
So the process for the applications is the applications will come in, they'll go through a lottery. Those applications will be reviewed. Those applicants who are approved as social equity or who meet the criteria for social equity applicants will then go forward to the Department of Consumer Protection, and they can apply for the provisional licenses. So each license has a 90-day application period. We will be coming up on the closing of the first retailer is the first license that was released. So the beginning of May, that will end. And then once all of the application periods close, we will then begin to review the applications from social equity applicants. So we expect to start the reviews of the applications sometime in June.
And what about the one that they don't have to go through the lottery? Is the same process, or the one they don't have to? I'm sorry.
Right, the ones we are, so Social Equity Council is not responsible for those that are not going through the lottery. They're going through the general lottery. That is through the Department of Consumer Protection, but the general lottery will not begin until the social equity lottery has ended.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the commissioner? Seeing none, thank you, Commissioner Lehman. Have a nice day. I'm sure we will be talking to each other. Up next is Department of Administrative Services.
I think this needs to be much more specific in the micro. So I think that would be some help. I cannot support that. A question also. Understand what that is. If you could explain what that is before I ask my question.
All set, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
Good afternoon, Senator. Hope you're well. Representative Walker.
I think so.
Excellent.
If you could just go over your deficiencies, please, ma'am, relative to the budget. I had to
Certainly.
explain that last time to Commissioner Lehman, make sure that he knew we were only talking about the deficiencies relative to the budget.
Happy to do so. Thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity. I want to acknowledge also Representative France, Senator Minor, and certainly all the other distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. Just for the record, Michelle Gilman, Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services, here to speak certainly on House Bill 5036 regarding the deficiency appropriations for fiscal year July 30th, ending July 30th, 2022. Specifically, DAS is requesting a deficiency appropriation of $25 million from the general fund and $1 million from the Special Transportation Fund for the State Insurance and Risk Management Board. Specifically, the $25 million relates to test kits and the purchases that DAS has made on behalf of DPH and certainly our municipalities and other agencies for vulnerable communities, in particular, congregate settings and others. As we await FEMA funding and reimbursement that we anticipate to come through, we are expecting to go into deficiency as we wait for that reimbursement by and large. We have spent $7 million to date on those test kits that were purchased earlier this year. And we also have some other COVID-related expenses, largely around the vaccine mandate implementation through that process. As we look to the additional 25, we'd like to ask for another 18 million as part of that overall 25 million, with the anticipation that we may need to purchase additional test kits to help meet any needs for additional COVID infection waves over the ensuing weeks or a couple of months ahead. We hope that we will not need to utilize that funding, and we'll be working closely with DPH, OPM, and our partner agencies regarding the monitoring of that wave and any supplies needed. But essentially, this will give us, significant cushion in order to make those purchases as needed. And then next, regarding the State Insurance and Risk Management Board, right now we are projecting a total shortfall of $1 million in that Special Transportation Fund account. SIRMB, as I'll refer to it, is a pay-as-you-go type of operation. It's not permitted to maintain reserves. And right now, the fleet liability insurance policy for the state insures approximately 12,000 vehicles, including our state-owned bus fleet. And that's subject to a $4 million per occurrence self-insured retention. This fiscal year, there have been some large bus liability claim settlements that were outside of the board's standard routine projections. So while those cases are being scheduled for trial soon, as well as, I should say, some cases will be scheduled for trial soon. So we are anticipating we may have an additional exposure this fiscal year. These large fleet liability claims create that anticipated shortfall. By and large, we're hoping in the future that this particular account will be leveled out after this fiscal year, but this request will help to get that to a stable point. And happy to take any questions. And I do have my subject matter experts from our agency on, as well as the consultant for the State Insurance Risk Board as well.
Thank you very much. A couple of different questions, Commissioner. We have 25 million for test kits or it says 24 on our sheet, it says 24.45 million. So for talking points, we'll say $25 million. The $25 million is for test kits that were already purchased. Is it just test kits or is it PPE? What is it exactly?
So we've already spent to date $7 million on those test kits that were, by and large purchased in December and January when the Omicron wave hit us and we needed to help supplement prior to the federal program going live and as supply chain was limited for our residents. So that was part of that distribution across the state that was done at the Omicron surge earlier this year. So that $7 million was largely those test kits, the rapid test kits that were distributed. And then some of that 7 million was also related to the vaccine mandate implementation and the vendor payments relative to that implementation and the continued operation of that. So that's that 7 million. The additional 18 million or so would be our reserve essentially for new rapid test kit purchases. Again, I think it's fair to say that that is a high number. It's likely that we would not utilize that full fund. But at this time, we're asking for that funding at this time, recognizing that, we'll be continuing to work with you, OPM and DPH around a sensible purchase over the coming months. It really is about monitoring the COVID trends. I think we're seeing certainly some potential infection rates in Western Europe. Already our infection rates are starting to elevate here. We want to really get a better sense of the market conditions for rapid tests. We're elevating PCR test capability soon across the state as well. But again, we want to ensure that we have the funds needed, through the end of June for test kits specifically. I do not anticipate that this would be utilized for PPE. At this time, I believe our warehouse has the essential stockpile needed to meet our state needs for our state agencies and other populations.
So I just want to be clear, 7 million are the expenses that already have happened, and 18 million is the anticipated expenses till which would go until June 30th.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, I would like to stress that by and large, these are all reimbursable expenses. At least we believe that most of the rapid test kit expenses are FEMA reimbursable. And so the impact ultimately to the general fund should be negligible. But until that reimbursement comes through from FEMA, we are asking for this increase for our funding.
So you believe that most, if not all of that, will be eligible through FEMA to be reimbursed to the state?
Correct.
Thank you for that. And so I'm going to ask a question that is not relative to this, and I want you to come back with it. And that is the number of positions that are in DAS by agency that has not been filled yet. So if you could bring that back to us or get this over to us, that would be wonderful.
Certainly. And this is for, Senator, just to clarify, for DAS specifically?
Not positions that are relative to DAS, positions that are over in DAS from other agencies.
Okay, so the executive branch under HR centralization.
Yes, please.
Certainly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, ma'am. You asked most of my questions, but I'm sure I can come up with a few more. Good afternoon, Commissioner. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to ask, okay, so I don't know if you have the number or not, but I'd like to know how much we have received from FEMA in the past year or two, I guess a couple of years, for reimbursements for our test kits and anything else that the rapid test kits and anything else that we are going to be going forward with reordering, so that we can see how much money we spent already in those areas. That would be helpful. So the way I guess you're saying is that you spent 7 million already, and what the amount that we get in reimbursement for from FEMA will help to wipe out some of that. But so we give you 7 million and then we give you another 18 million. If all of those things are reimbursed by FEMA, what happens to that money?
So I would, good to see the Deputy Secretary, because I was going to defer to my OPM colleague. And certainly OPM has, the full overview of all of our FEMA reimbursements across all agencies. So Deputy Secretary, happy to defer to you.
Hi, Paul.
Hello. So the answer to that is if FEMA reimbursement occurs after the close of fiscal year 22, those reimbursements would be credited to the general fund as if they were revenue. So it's a reimbursement to the general fund of any expenses that were paid out of the general fund from the prior year.
Okay, so it'd be treated as a reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay.
If we receive that reimbursement during fiscal year 22, it would essentially shift that cost off the general fund. And if to the extent you provide any deficiency appropriation for this purchase, those dollars would essentially lapse.
Okay.
They would remain unspent.
Yeah, I thought they would lapse, but okay. All right. And Senator Austin asked my other question for you to respond to. And also taking into account what's in the March letter that talks about all the vacancies in the agencies. That is something that is, we would like to be incorporated in your response to Senator Austin to make sure that we are looking at that. And the other part would, and I don't know if you would be the one, but the other part would be how much money we're spending on overtime because of the fact that we don't have positions filled. And I noticed that some of those overtime numbers are not accurate. So we're going to have to get a little bit more detail. And I noticed DSS did not have anything. And I know that they are doing overtime for fact. So we're going to have to get some more details. But thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for letting me ask one question.
You're welcome. You're welcome,
Yeah.
Madam Co-Chair.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner, I don't see any other questions. I think you're all set right now. We appreciate it. And if you could just send that information over to our Madam Administrator, Susan Keene, for this. And we may have some hard questions for DAS as we move forward, but we understand that much of what we have to ask questions about is from the prior administration. So just be aware of that.
Happy to answer any continued questions, and we'll certainly provide that data in an expedited timeframe for you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it. Up next is Department of Consumer Protection.
Deputy Commissioner Magnin is there with her team.
Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative Franson, all the great members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Maureen Magnin, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Consumer Protection, and I'm here today to talk to you about the department's 2022 deficiency. And our deficiency is the $1.1 million, and it is related to the unfunded positions for the adult use cannabis legislation that you passed last year. And that's really my testimony, so I'm ready for questions.
So thank you very much, Commissioner. And I would just ask, how many positions do you currently have in that are filled for adult use cannabis?
We currently have 34 positions filled out of the 62 we are planning to hire. And we expect by the end of the fiscal year to be closer to 45, 48.
Thank you very much. Representative Walker.
So thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, Deputy Commissioner.
Representative.
The peeps, it's peeps time, so I got to make sure you get your peeps. It says activities associated with the passage. So you're saying that the activities are just positions, there's nothing else involved in that?
No, we had some other expenses, but we've been able to cover them in the agency.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. So the rest of the stuff, so it's strictly, so the 1.1 is strictly positions. And
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get at the end of the year, you hope to fill how many?
We hope to be somewhere between 45 and 48 positions out of 62 that we need for the program.
Out of 62, so the 62, the difference would be about 18 or so. That's going to be covered in 23.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and are you budgeting for that in 23?
Yes, we expect that there'll be funding. There is funding in the 23 budget for these positions. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that. Oh, okay, well, we'll have to talk about that because I didn't see 20. I didn't see 18 positions for you for 23. Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And would that be anticipating revenue from the adult use cannabis to cover those positions?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other comments or questions? Looks like you are all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
You too. Up next is the Department of Labor. Commissioner Bartolomeo, you're up.
I'm here. Hi.
Let us know what you have for deficiencies.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Representative Walker. Hi, Senator Austin. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. I'm pleased to report that the agency is no longer in need of the $14.7 million deficiency that is in the personnel services line of the budget for the state fiscal year ending in 2022. Since the governor's budget was crafted, Department of Labor has received an additional federal funding from unemployment insurance. And between both the unemployment insurance base funding and the unemployment insurance above base supplemental grant that we received, totaled $12.9 million higher than originally estimated. So there is no need for a deficiency allocation in FY22. I would like to say that, as I've already testified before this committee, we will still require additional state PS funding to address projected needs for the upcoming state fiscal year. The department is currently working with OPM to determine the exact amount for this shortfall, but at this time, we believe that it will be less than the $30 million currently included in the governor's recommended adjustments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I see no questions for you. I think you are all set.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
You too. Up next is CHRO.
Good afternoon, Senator Olston, Representative Walker, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you regarding the deficiency budget. We submitted testimony regarding a $300,000 projected deficiency. However, that has been updated due to delayed onboarding of the staff, and that is now estimated at $250,000.
Tanya?
Yes.
Tanya, we can't hear you. There you go. That's better. Thank you.
All
I don't know
right.
what happened. Somehow you slipped away for a minute.
Okay.
Go
All
ahead.
right. Thank you. So we submitted testimony regarding a $300,000 projected deficiency. That has been updated to $250,000 to reflect the delayed onboarding of 7 durational positions that have been approved for us. We've already been able to hire 1 durational attorney. We have 2 positions that are pending approval and pending review of their references, etc. And then the remaining positions are all in different stages of the recruitment. We believe these positions are necessary to maintain adequate staffing regarding the influx of cases we receive regarding COVID. And I'll keep it brief, and both Cheryl Sharp and myself are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions for CHRO? Representative Walker.
Good afternoon. It's great to see both of you. Great to see you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank
so
you.
the positions are sessional or seasonal or part-time?
They're durational. They're approved through the fiscal year 23.
Okay. Okay. And I'm sorry, and there are 5?
7 total. Go ahead,
7.
Cheryl.
Now, I was going to say there are 7 total that will end in June 30th of 2023, and then we have 2 additional durational attorneys that will take us to June 30th of 2024, but they wouldn't be onboarded until July 1st of this year.
This year. Okay.
Yeah, so there'll be a little bit of an overlap because of the litigation associated with the COVID-19 cases that we're getting.
So my last comment is, did we get the person who's going to be doing the disparity study? Is that contract completed, and are we ready to announce who we have?
We can't announce who we have right at this moment, but we're substantially in the process, and we're told that we can't publicly discuss it because it's a negotiation.
Okay, this is a negotiation since November. So I think we need to talk about what's in the entitlement of a negotiation. This is getting absurd. So no, I'm not saying it to you guys. I'm saying it to who's receiving it right now.
And I think we can say that.
We're very near completion.
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a very good answer. Tanya, you did it perfectly. Are there any other comments or questions for CHRO? Seeing none, ladies, you're all set. Up next is Deep, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
Yes, hello, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and Senator Minor, and other members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Very simply, the Police Accountability Bill required the NCON officers utilize body cameras, and that requirement is due to be implemented this July. We have made an initial purchase of equipment totaling $268,000 to outfit officers with the necessary equipment. This is the first year's payment in a 5-year contract that totals $195,000, which includes ongoing equipment and cloud storage. The governor's proposed midterm adjustment included an additional $156,000 in other expenses to handle the financial requirements of this contract for next year. And we are making good progress on this, on the installation of the equipment. It's anticipated that we'll be installing that in May. Dennis, feel free to jump in if you have any other comments or questions, or comments, Dennis, and then I think we're ready for questions.
So I would just like one thing, Deputy Commissioner. I'm wondering if you could send us over a copy of the contract, please, for this, that outlines the 5-year financial aspect of it.
Yes, glad to do that, Senator Austin.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection? Representative McCarty.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome, Mason. Could you just tell us, so these body cameras, they're for the environmental conservation officers, is that correct? And how many are there, if you have that information?
Yes, those are for our environmental conservation police. We have about 50 officers or 50 folks in the division right now, and those will be distributed among our officers in the field.
Okay, thank you, Mason. Good to see you.
Thank you, Representative McCarty. Up next, Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification. So is it your understanding that the summer hires that would be in the park system, and I've heard that number might be as high as 30, are not required to have a camera?
Yes, Senator Minor, that is my understanding. The seasonal officers are not post-certified, and they will not be, or most of the seasonal officers are not post-certified, and they will not be carrying a gun, and the ones that are not post-certified will not be required to wear the camera.
And just a follow-up. So of those individuals, are any of them certified with arrest powers?
Yeah, we do have a couple. It's very small. I think it's under 5 seasonal NCON officers that are post-certified that would have the full police officer status in a seasonal capacity.
All right, thank you.
All set, Senator Minor.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? So Mason, Deputy Commissioner, when you send over that contract, can you have on there the number of NCON officers that you have, the number that are post-certified, and the numbers that will be required to wear body cams for us, please?
Absolutely, glad to.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe you're all set.
Thank you.
Up next is the Office of the Medical Examiner. Dr. Gill.
Yep, good afternoon. So I'm Jim Gill, Chief Medical Examiner, and we have a projected deficiency in of $305,000 for personal services and $130,000 for other expenses.
And then, thank you. And in the personal services, is that people that you are attempting to hire, or could you just let me know exactly what that is?
Sure, we have 51 full-time positions, and there are 2 openings, and 14 part-time positions, and there are 9 openings.
And did this result in overtime for you, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So can you send us your position count, the number of positions that are not filled, and whether or not those positions have been forwarded to DAS for being refilled, please? That would be
Yes.
helpful. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for the medical examiner? Thank you very much, sir.
I'm sorry, Senator. How many
Oh, I'm
positions?
sorry.
How many positions were there, did you say?
51 full-time positions and 14 part-time.
How many full-time?
51.
51 positions for the medical examiner?
Correct.
And that's 430,000?
No, that's for the people that are not, that he hasn't been able to bring in. He's short too.
Okay, I'm sorry. How many are you short?
Yeah, we're short 2 people.
Okay, I'm sorry. I asked that wrong, because when you said 51, that's why I got a little, I was like, we've got to get you 51 more people? Okay.
We've had 51 for many years now. We could use a few more, though.
That's okay. That's a good thought. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
And Dr. Gill, if you could also send us what you would recommend as an adequate position count in the medical examiner's office, that would also be helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I do have another question. Representative Dillon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Doctor. Thank you for your work. Your department was really hit pretty hard with opioid and then with COVID, and then with cuts and facing decertification. We did have a conversation about not necessarily new positions, but changing some part-time positions to full-time. Is that true?
Yes, we have, and there are some, I think, some positions being offered in potentially in the midterm, I guess, budget for new positions as well, which we certainly can need.
Okay. Would you characterize what you're facing now as more of an opioid problem, or is there any one particular way to characterize the workload challenges you're facing?
You know, it's a combination, I think, of the opioid crisis. We've also seen an increase in number of homicides and motor vehicle deaths. And then COVID, you know, all of the COVID deaths get reported to our office. So yeah, it means a phone call for each one of them that our investigators have to handle, plus cremation requests for all of those. So that's a whole additional number of hours and hours of work that we have to do for those.
Now, many years ago, and I don't know if this really helped you, there was a request by your predecessor to allow your department to charge for expert testimony. Have you been able to take advantage of that to generate any revenue?
There is that in the statutes for when we get called in civil cases, and I believe it's $400 or $500 an hour. That goes to the general fund, and there are very few times that we actually get called for those. Usually in civil cases, the attorneys like to have their own expert. They don't want an independent medical examiner screwing up their case for them.
I'm sorry, you didn't hear my initial response to that, but yes, thank you but I won't repeat it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Chair Austin, for the questions that you sent. Representative Walker, I won't repeat them, but that's really helpful.
Thank you, Representative Dillon. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Gill, it's good to see you. Question for you. I know you talked about your account and the workers. You said that we have like 52 workers and you were down like short 2.
For the full-time at 51 and 2, and then the part-time we're down as well.
Okay, so and I noticed there was a change in terms of their policies in terms of how with the medical examiner's office in terms of I noticed that you're not allowing for pickups on 24 hours anymore. What is that? Is that due to your loss in your part-time workers, or?
It's just a shortage of staff in general, and then our investigators and our mortuary assistants who usually, kind of do some of that work, they're busy going to scenes. We just don't have the in-house staff. We have one person here at night, usually by themselves, handling the phones. If a funeral home comes, we need someone else to help them do that. And we sometimes just don't have that option. So yeah, so we have had to cut back on some of the service hours for the funeral directors. We hope that would be temporary until we get back up to staff. Plus, we have 3 refrigerated tractor trailers in our parking lot that we have to store remains in because our facility is not big enough. And so that takes time to get those remains out for when a funeral home comes to claim them.
All right. So is that those rentals of those particular storage containers, is that an increase in your budget in some sense?
Yes, I believe some of that we're able to cover with some of the COVID dollars because it was in a way related to COVID.
No. How much money have you received in COVID dollars?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not probably under 100,000. I would suspect. We haven't gotten that much.
Okay. Now, due to the online death certificates and everything, has that helped you out in terms of efficiencies, or does that cause an increase on your on manpower?
Right now, I think, especially in the long term, it will help with increasing efficiency in that we no longer have to mail and send out these paper death certificates. Right now, there's not kind of a computer link, so we have to actually double enter our death certificates. So we have to put them into our system and then type them again into the electronic death registration system. So you're talking about thousands and thousands of death certificates a year. That takes quite a bit of manpower. But hopefully they're working on a bridge that allow that to be more seamless. So we're still waiting for that. But in the long run, the big picture, it'll definitely improve our efficiency.
Okay. Well, thank you for those answers, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Baker. Are there any other questions for the medical examiner? Dr. Gill, seeing none. Appreciate you coming on board, and you can send that information to Sue Keen, our administrator. That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
So up next is DDS, and I see Commissioner Chef, you are here. If you could talk to us about your deficiency, that would be wonderful.
I will, and I'm joined today by my colleague and CFO, Scott McWilliams, for any technical questions, although I don't know that we'll have many. Very briefly, good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative Franson, members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Jordan Chef, Commissioner of the Department of Developmental Services. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to testify. I'm here today to discuss the projected deficiency of $1.29 million in the Employment Opportunities and Day Services account identified in this bill. Since this shortfall was included in the bill, DDS has since identified a few additional lapses, and we now project ending the year with an overall lapse. DDS has determined that we will have a total of $12.5 million in lapses across various accounts. These lapses will offset the deficiency identified in the bill, as well as additional funding requirements associated with the implementation of the ARPA Act HCBS reinvestment plan. In order to address these shortfalls, we'll be requesting at the FAC committee action to transfer $10.27 million from personal services and behavioral services program accounts to the Employment Opportunities and Day Services account. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Because I noticed on the letter that came out on March 22nd, DDS did not have any deficiencies, and so just curious when we were noticing that DDS had some deficiencies.
Scott, can you? When did we report the deficiency in day and employment services?
So we initially reported the deficiency, I believe, in our January CFSR, and these deficiencies were related to additional expenditures related to the home and community-based services ARPA initiatives we are undertaking, in which the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare recently approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm just saying that it just didn't show up in the March 22nd letter.
Okay.
Probably just an oversight, just letting you know. But Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. It's great to see you again. So can I didn't hear, I heard the numbers. How much are you going to be deficient?
We are not in deficiency any longer because we have money in other SIDs that will be able to cover that. So at the time that we were included in this bill, we were projecting a deficiency. We will now be able to manage through FAC instead. So there's no additional appropriation needed.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're saying is, okay, so you're taking it out of personnel services, and in the lapses, you have about 6.5 million in personnel lapses. So how much, again, can you give me that number that you're taking out of personnel services?
Scott, do you have the breakdown on how we'll cover this through FAC?
Yeah, so there's, we haven't put together the FAC package yet, but we'll probably take all 6.5 million out of personal services and an additional 4 million out of the behavioral health services program, SID.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so okay. Is there any way to find out how many positions those are that are being taken out of your account? When you can send it to us, you don't have to give it to us now, but we'd like to know how many positions are being carved out of both the personnel and the behavioral services program to accommodate the employment services. So that would be appreciated. Thank you.
We can provide that information. I just want to note that it isn't always just vacant positions that creates the liquidity in the personnel services account, but there's gaps between vacancies and incumbents coming and going where there's periods. So a number of positions, we can absolutely give you what's vacant presently, but it's not static in terms of, we ebb and flow through the year, and some of those savings are achieved through those means as well.
Do you have any overtime expenses now?
Yes, we have overtime expenses.
Okay. Do you have an idea how much your overtime expenses are, sir?
We can give you we track overtime really closely. We've actually been pretty effective in managing it, even through the pandemic. Actually got some shout outs in press, which is a change for us over years past for effectively managing our overtime. But we keep a detailed overtime report and can provide information to you on overtime expenses this year.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Datham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just wanted to find out, I'm not sure if it's okay to ask this in this committee or if it's more part of the FAC. In terms of the 10 million, how are you envisioning spending that within the employment opportunities and day services? Is it going to be pushed down to the nonprofits that are working there, or how is that going to be managed?
All of that money is either spent through nonprofits or through a direct hire process for those of our individuals who use self-determination. But that money, I believe, it's projected as that would be the deficit by year end. It's already money being spent. It isn't additional money. And that money was used to help stabilize the provider network during what's been a torturous 2 years for them.
Okay. So do you go before the FAC after you have spent the money, or do you do it beforehand to get the approval first?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the technical aspects of the FAC. I've been before FAC a couple times in my time at central office, and I believe that we work throughout the year with our partners at OPM to manage and project how we'll cover within existing appropriations in an attempt, frankly, to avoid deficiency meetings like this. So if we can manage it within our FAC and they're kept apprised of how we're working within our current appropriation.
Got it. So I was just concerned. I mean, here we are nearly April, and if you're talking about spending an additional $10 million of lapsed funds, I just want to make sure that we're allocating them right. So thank you so much for your explanation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Nathan.
Thanks, Representative Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that you didn't, good afternoon, Commissioner, sorry.
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you again. I understand you didn't put together your FAC package yet, but since your testimony, I was surprised. I didn't know that you were going to be here, or yesterday I didn't know anyway, or the 22nd I didn't know whenever I saw the report. And so I wondered, did you anywhere provide a list of the various accounts that would be affected by the $12 million that you referenced in your testimony today?
I think that the lion's share of it is between personnel services and our behavioral supports program. And then there are other smaller amounts from a couple other selected SIDs. I don't have the detail on and I could be wrong. Scott, is it covered in full through those two SIDs, or is there additional money in some of the other SIDs that will be necessary?
There may be a little additional money that we need to pull from our emergency placement or ID partnership accounts, where we also have surpluses.
You were projecting, I think, a $4 million lapse in behavioral already. So would we assume that that's 8 million in the PS account, or?
I think it was 6.5 million in the PS account is what we were projecting. Is that correct, Scott? 6.5?
That's correct, 6.5.
Okay, is that in writing anywhere? Although
we haven't gotten the FAC yet. That would be under FAC.
Thank you very much.
In the most recent comptroller's letter from OPM to the comptroller, like where.
Okay, I'll check that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam.
Good to see you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Dillon. Are there any other questions for the Commissioner? Thank you, Commissioner. You're all set.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Secretary.
We have testimony from our local district manager as well as
yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions. In the letter from March 22nd, it said the comptroller had 25 million in adjudicated claims. Is that number accurate, or is that number not something we need anymore?
Paul's got that answer.
Thank
Paul?
you. Senator, no appropriation is required to cover the costs that are paid out of the adjudicated claims, call it account. Under existing statute, those are covered by the resources of the general fund at such time as the court orders a payment. The bulk of the payments this year, I think we're up to 23 million as of right now. The bulk of it is related to some residual Seaback v. Rowland court case payments, and there are a smattering of other adjudicated claims that needed to be paid out. So were you to take no action to appropriate, those payments will be made out of the resources of the general fund. My only caution about an appropriation is if a claim comes due after the General Assembly has adjourned and it is payable before the end of the fiscal year, we would not have the resources in place absent this mechanism to pay out of the unappropriated resources of the general fund.
So on the my understanding is that the Seaback v. Rowland, a lot of that was handled out of the RSA before. Is that accurate, or was that always done through the adjudicated claims?
The bulk of it has been paid out of adjudicated claims, and a lot of it is related to payments of those individuals no longer employed by the state, as well as some of the attorneys' fees that are associated with that litigation.
And do you know how close we are to ending the Seaback v. Rowland?
I do not have a good sense from either the Attorney General's office or others who might be involved in finalizing the details in it. I believe we're very close to having made final payments, but I can't say for certain that there won't be a few lagging payments next fiscal year.
So could you ask about that and get us that information? That would be helpful. And adjudicated claims, you said it relative to the court making a recommendation that these be, or an order. The Seaback v. Rowland as an example, is that adjudicated by the courts on a case-by-case basis, or was that the blanket authorization to have them paid?
It was litigation that was settled via a, I'll call it court order, and that's what makes it an adjudicated claim.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be, the court doesn't have to sign off on each individual component of that particular case.
That's correct. It was the blanket agreement that was reached, and the court ordered the state to take such actions as would satisfy the claims that were brought forward by the plaintiffs.
And this would come out of the surplus of the general fund, or it would come out of lapsed accounts out of the general fund?
It comes out of the unappropriated resources of the general fund.
So I guess that then we really wouldn't know if we were going to need some by the 30th of June if we leave on March 4th.
That's correct.
The possibility would exist that there would be a deficiency in the general fund without us being here to correct that.
That's correct. So most years there isn't an appropriation. There was a short period of time where an appropriation was in place for this purpose. Most years it is just paid out of the resources of the general fund. It impacts the final numbers that are reported by the controller when the year is closed out.
And my last question, Mr. Secretary, is relative to the CBAC agreement. So is there any way that, and I might have asked this earlier, but is there any way that we can get what OPM says is in RSA, what is in the 23 budget to be spent on this agreement, if there's anything in either carry forward or ARPA relative to this agreement, so we understand all the different pieces of it, and that would be for both the 22 and the 23 year. For those, I don't think we did anything in the 22 or 23 year, but I just want to make sure that we're checking every pot that we have. That would be helpful. So because that's the biggest part of the deficiency, and I don't really have a clear understanding of where all the pieces are coming from. And of course, we always have to have OFA review all those pieces for us also. So I'm a little bit concerned about where we are relative to the agreement.
Yes, ma'am. My staff reminded me in real time that we had provided this detail, or some detail anyway, breaking that out by category and by year in the General Government B subcommittee materials that we provided.
Okay.
And I forwarded that to Susan while we were sitting here about an hour ago. So she's got that detail. It's on page 54 of those materials.
Okay, great. Thank you. Representative Walker.
Yes, I just wanted to know if you can tell us, when are we having an FAC meeting, the next FAC meeting?
Mr. Patamianos.
Yes, Representative, we are trying to schedule one for April. I want to say it's 7th. So that'd be the first Thursday of April. And I would anticipate that we will also have a meeting in May and in June.
I would anticipate that too. Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously,
sir.
with May, we'll have to work with you, given that the first Thursday of the month follows adjournment of the legislature. We'd want to make sure that you're all available for.
We
May
did that
meeting.
before, and none of us like it.
We'll work with you on a date that works.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Walker, any closing comments?
No, thank you very much for all your answers and following up with us. I look forward to continuing this conversation because we have quite a few things that are still up in the air. But thank you again for answering our questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, any closing comments?
Just that it's a pleasure to be here. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Senator Minor.
Thank you, and thank you for the information that you provided. And I'll certainly take a look at the documents that you've sent in.
Representative France.
Just echo the same thing. Thank you for taking the time to come in and share the context of the report and respond to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Administrator.
The next thing on our agenda, Madam Chair, is a public hearing on the remainder of our raised bills, which will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. via Zoom. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 people registered to speak so far, and our registration closes in 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Administrator. And Madam Administrator, are you asking all of us to come in, the leaders to come in on a screening?
No, that screening is actually tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I was actually very happy to hear that the screening is not until tomorrow. So that's wonderful. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. See you all tomorrow. Have a nice day. Thank you, Madam Administrator, and all your staff. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.